Did you hear that, Sal? Jimmy lifted his eyes from his work, looked at George's reflection, and replied, Sal, no. What's up with him? He probably spent more time hoovering over people, taking to others' reflections in the large mirror in the wall than he did conversing with them face to face. This unique perspective of people, his profession, never failed to make him feel more like a fly on the wall than an actual participant in the conversation. Jimmy looked at the people like old puzzle pieces. Sure, most of them seemed quite similar, but if you picked one piece out of the pile, you could see its own unique shape. It's amazed of him on how all these singular pieces somehow managed to fit together. Sure, every now and then you'd have a piece that needed to be pressed into that place with a little more force than the others, or a piece that went missing, but no picture was perfect. All the one-on-one conversations he had with the most of the male inhabitants in town over the past 40-odd years had made him feel like a kind of counselor or advisor in town. Oh, haven't you heard? Sal's in the hospital. Of course, some kind of coma. George hoped his enthusiasm for delivering his juicy bit of gossip hadn't come up as uncaring. Coma? He was just in here last week. He lowered his scissors and looked right at George's reflection with a stunned look on his face. Come to think of it, he said he had a doctor's appointment later that day. He wasn't looking too good either. Yeah, according to Sue, the doctors don't know what's wrong with him. He just collapsed last night while playing bingo at the church. Oh, and get this, Carl's son Kevin is the one the exterminator business disappeared the other day. Nobody has hide nor seen hear of him since. Jimmy just stood there, thinking about his conversation with Sal the other day. That seems like normal enough to me. Doesn't Kevin have a girlfriend who lives out of town? He's probably just shacked up with her. He does, but he missed appointments, and nobody has heard from him, answered George, with an air of certainty. He loved to be the guy with all the answers. Jimmy scratched his head. You know, now that I think of it, Sal mentioned having Kevin spray his attic last week, and he said he had some sort of infestation up there. Get this, according to him, his entire attic was covered in some sort of webbing, and it was all squirming what looked like thin, short strands of string. George turned his head to look at Jimmy, his expression with a big question mark. What, like silkworms? I've never heard of an infestation like that before. Jimmy spun George around in his barber chair and looked straight at him. Me neither, but that's what he said. Little white strands hanging from the webs. It was strange the other day. Sal comes in here for a haircut every 2 weeks like clockwork. I don't ever recall him going longer than 2 weeks without one. But when he came in here the last time, he looked like he hadn't been in the shop in a couple of months. His hair was a lot longer than it should have been, and it was stark white. George didn't seem impressed. He's an old white hair. It's been for years. No, his hair used to be gray. There's a difference, trust me. I noticed these things. Who else but me knows about that dent on the back of your head? George defensively reached back and rubbed the back of his head. Oh, okay, you're the expert here, but... And another thing, Jimmy said, cutting George off. He had the wildest werewolf ears I've ever seen. George's puzzled expression beckoned Jimmy to elaborate. Oh, that's something my father used to say to customers with hair on their... or in their ears. Sal never said much about ear hair before, but the other day his ears were a damn jungle. Jimmy decided not to mention at the thought he had seen something of the werewolf hairs twitching when he was sweeping them up later on. He had blamed on drinking 2 more cups of coffee than usual that day. George settled back in his chair. Well, it seems to me like we're carrying off on 3 different conversations here. I don't see why this has to do with Sal being in the hospital. I'm going to check up on him later, when I pick up Sue from there. Jimmy absentmindedly brushed the white hair off of his arm, spun George back around, and turned to the task at hand. Jimmy didn't have another customer after George left. He had plenty of boring days like today. Waiting for people to drag themselves into the barber shop for a haircut was just part of his job. He tossed back 3 aspirin and washed them down with a swig of old burnt coffee. He decided to go see if he could just get his headache to subside for a bit. He had been feeling it slowly ramping up all day, and now was making it hard to think straight. That's it, he said out loud with the empty shop. He was tired and just wanted to go home and sleep off whatever he was coming down with. He shut off the lights, grabbed his coat, and locked up. He stepped out of sight in front of the display window or something about the size of a child's fist slipped down from the ceiling from a thin strand of filament. It landed on the counter littered with the tools of the barber trade and swiftly headed back up towards the back room. It came across a stray of white hair, attached with a strand of silk, hanging from its parent, and dragged it along behind as it crawled back to the counter on the floor and entered the back room. It approached in a large garbage bag lying in front of the back door, easily slit the plastic bag of hair open, and began to emit a shrill sound of reminiscent of whistling kettle. Slowly over the next several minutes, like little white hairs slipped out of the bag and slinked towards the source of the noise. It then attached them one by one to the ever-lengthening strand of silk tracing behind it. It crawled back to the place of the ceiling it originally came through, with its collection of twitching white things in tow, and slipped out of sight. The laden silk strand quickly followed, and vanished into the ceiling as well. A cargo van was haphazardly parked about 10 feet off of the dirt road in the middle of the forest. Its sides were emblazoned and identical logos read, "K-POW Extermination." A pale-skinned man sat stiffly on the front seat. The top of his skull was ripped open like a pan of Jiffy Pop. Chubby white worms engorged with the brain matter. Inside the man's exposed skull, they wiggled in there, and they're all over his lap and the front of the seats of the van. A spider like the size of a baseball bat sat in the passenger seat. Its silvery sheen gave an almost maniacal appearance, and had a worm pinned to the seat like petables. Imitated little husks of worms lay around it. The backseat was covered in glistening, almost translucent pattern of silk. Little white strands were woven over the pattern like some sort of twitching tapestry. What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.